Hey guys, Squirth Camel EDV. I really like the Yamaha 700 Tenere. I think it's a great looking bike. The only exception to that is the rear license plate, brake light, signal light assembly thing on the back. It looks like the Starship Enterprise. It's a big glob of plastic and mess, and the signal lights are horrendous. It's heavy, it's fragile, it's bulky, it looks terrible. So we did a tail tidy for the bike. It's a very straightforward kit. We have the main bracket that replaces all of the plastic bits and pieces. And then we've got a license plate bracket that goes in the back. So this is stainless steel. So this is going to be heavier than most of the other ones on the market. I did some testing with a bunch of different aluminum gauges and was finding that on rough terrain, we were getting cracking on the bends. Whenever you bend material, it gets weaker, just the way that it is. So anywhere that it was bent, we were developing cracks in the aluminum until we got to quite a big thickness. You get a little bit of mud built up on the license plate, the backing plate, and we're on rough roads. The vibration just ends up making a mess. So we ended up going with the stainless. If you're looking for the lightest one on the market, this is not it. But if you're looking for one that's gonna hold up over time, this is a great choice for you. This still weighs less than the factory piece, and it's much more compact and looks much better at the end of the day. The install for this is, installing this part is fairly easy. Taking the original stuff off is a bit of a pain, so it's a little bit involved. So you want to make sure you leave yourself enough time. You're going to be in the hour range, I would guess, going through it at a leisurely pace. We'll try and do it a little bit quicker. We have done, have done several of these, so with the electric impact, we can get through it pretty quick, and we'll get at it. So first things first, we got to pop the seat off. We'll take the pillion seat off. This is such a stupid design. We've got the bolts for the seat here. It's such a dumb design. I don't know why Yamaha did it. They've got the latch mechanism for the pillion seat. They could have come up with something. I know it's a budgety bike, but having to bust out the tools to get underneath the seat to the battery is a real pain, in my opinion. So if you have any sort of rack on the back, you're gonna have to take that off. If you don't have a rack, you have the little cargo tie downs, you're gonna have to yank them off. Now we're gonna come to the triangle pieces here, the mid fairing pieces, not sure what else to call them. 3 bolts on each side. These are T30. So the black one goes in the front hole, the 2 silver ones in the back. After we pop that cover off, we've got a plastic pop rivet here. So these guys, when they're sitting flush like that, you push the middle in, you can pull them out, and then when you go to reinstall them, they need to be popped back out all the way, slide it in, push that so it's flush. And we're just going to do the same thing on the other side. So there are 5 bolts on the back here that hold the top of this on, and they're all 4mm Allen. So these are all button heads with a weird coppery spacer and a black plastic washer on them. And with that done, we can pop this off. There's not a lot to it. Just pull the front sides out a little bit, and you can lift this up, and then we've got to slide it back. So there's a tab here on top of the signal light, or I should say the brake light, and it slides into that. So just make sure you slide this whole thing back before you take it out. So we're going to start here. There's the 2 the two acorn nuts here. It holds the tail light on. And then there's a washer that is underneath the acorn, and it can stick to the rubber on here, so you just need to make sure that you take it off with the nut, or else you'll risk losing it. So the zip tie's right here. Obviously be careful you're not catching any of the wires. So this wire here with the white on it is for the tail light. So we're going to come to the clip right here. I'm just going to pop this guy open. And then the biggest connector here is the tail light. So there's a tab on that. We're going to give that a squeeze. Might need to take a small screwdriver and awl to get in to push that tab down far enough. So with that wire unclipped, you can wiggle the tail light out and you can set it aside. So I'm going to come right here and we're going to pop these guys out. So they got bolts going in all sorts of directions, up, down, in and out. You have to take this piece off to get that piece off. Everything is blocking everything else, which is really weird, the way that they've done it. And I don't understand why. I know it's Yamaha, so there's a reason for it, but I can't figure it out. So basically every bolt in here has to be removed. So it doesn't really matter the order now that we do it. Got one here we can take out. The stuff's starting to get loose. Now we're going to go in from the underside now. I'm going to put the bike lift up. So we're just going to pop the signal light wiring out here. Just a little tab. Give it a pull. These guys go the opposite direction of this one. This one you got to push it in. These ones you got to pull them out. So just make sure that you have that wiring loose. And then this one here is for the license plate light, and we're going to reuse this one, the black one. Get all that stuff loose. So up from the bottom, there's 4 bolts here that hold the whole back section on. We're going to pop those out. And when you take the last bolt out, just make sure you grab this because the whole thing is going to come off. So this is the giant lump that we're replacing. The only thing out of here that we're going to reuse is the signal light lamp and this bracket here that holds the brake light on. To get this bracket off, we have to keep disassembling to get in there. Oh, I lied. Actually, we can just pull those wires through. I forgot about that. So pull those wires through. Can set this lump aside. And then we're going to take this off again, T30. And we can discard that. We're going to come in here, we're going to take these out. Again, T30. And then 10 mil on the nuts here. You take the reflector bracket off, discard it. Zip ties that hold the wiring on, pop that one out too. Pull all of these wires back through. So we're retaining the license plate light. So we're going to pop these out. So there's nuts, washers, and spacers in there. Just make sure that when you take this out, you don't lose them. So nuts, washers, spacers. You can pull the light out and be careful. You can see on this post here, there's a little spacer, and the other one's stuck in the rubber bushing. So just make sure you yank that off. And then you can slide the washers back on and just get the nut started. Keeps all this stuff together. And we can set that aside. We will reuse it though. Now, depending on the signal lights that you're going to get, the LED signal lights, because we're not reusing these giant pumpkins, you need signal lights that have a 10 mil stem on them to fit through the mounting location here for the signal lights. So these factory ones, not that I expect anyone would ever want to reuse these. To each their own. If you do, cool, but certainly not my flavor. Your aftermarket signal lights are probably not going to have the appropriate connectors on them for this bike. So this piece will never go back on this bike. I know that 100%. So I'm going to clip the wires off these stock signal lights, and then we'll use them as connectors on our LED lights. We're going to take the conglomeration of garbage here. We're going to pull these rubber bushings out, rubber grommets out, and we're going to take them and we're going to put them inside of our tail tidy mount. They don't have a forward or back one, so it doesn't matter which direction you put them in. Like so. Take a wire from our light. Take the nuts and washers off here. And then we still have the spacers, and they go into the rubber grommets. Little wiggle. Washers and nuts on the back side. So the height of these spacers is just a little bit more than the thickness of this material. So if we just straight bolt the bracket on, when the spacers come through those holes, we can't get them quite tight enough and it's going to rattle. So we've got to put the larger washers on there to keep everything together. So we've got our M6 with the 10 mil head bolts here and the integrated washers, and that's what's going to hold this on. So helpful if you have a hand with this. We're going to put the big washer on and then the factory bolt back in. Like so. And then we'll just do that with the other ones too. So we can take the metal bracket that was attached to the taillight previously, and we can reinstall it. So the tab on the back of the bracket points towards the back of the brake light. and the two foam rubber pieces are at the top, and this is at the bottom, the single. Just the shape of the tail light, you would think that the part that sticks out farther might be on top, but it's not. It goes this way. So we're going to add our washers. And our acorn nuts, or not acorn nuts, but the capped nuts. So there's a little tab here, female side, and there's a male side here. So when you're going to put this on, this part is going to slide underneath that. So you can see that tab here is underneath this piece. And then we've got the two embedded nuts. So we're going to come up from the bottom, and we're going to put two fasteners in it. So we've got two of the T30 flanged shoulder bolts, silver ones, and there's two holes here. And this retains the brake light. So we're going to come to the back and mount the license plate, the backing plates. So your kit comes with two M6 button head bolts and some flange nuts. So dab of blue. It's really important on these parts that you put blue Loctite on an off-roadish bike. The vibration, knobby tires and rough roads and everything, it's quite easy to lose your license plate and have this whole thing rattle off. So these are not the signal lights that I intend on using. Unfortunately, my shipment was delayed and I was hoping to have them in time to do this video, but I don't. So I'm just going to show you how these go on. I'm not going to show you the wiring. That's pretty straightforward. A lot of you will be getting signal lights that already have the pigtails wired on, so you're just going to clip them in. But we're going to run these wires through the hole here, and then the stud drops in there. Put the nut back on. So these signal lights have 3 wires on them. They function as marker lights as well as signal lights. So your factory lights don't do that. They're simply on to blink and flash, and that's it. There's no running light option. So we've got 3 wires now. We've got both of our signal lights, and we've got a license plate light. And you run them along the left side of the bracket here, and there's a nice spot to get them up and through. Obviously, these are going to have longer pigtails on them when you're running the lights that you are actually going to do, and you're going to plug them in. Like I said, we're not going to be using these ones, but I'll show you the routing. We're going to take a zip tie and tie these all together to keep everything nice and neat. And we've got the slots through the bracket itself, so you can run a zip tie through the slot and loosely around the bundle to keep everything together and in a good spot, like that. So your wires are going to be a lot longer, and we'll be plugging back into the factory pigtails here. So when we route these wires, they're coming between the end of the subframe and the plastic here. There's a channel there, so there's lots of room Lots of room for all of the different connectors and plugs. And then this stuff will all get zip tied together for your signals. And then up to your connectors here. The wires are going to go back into this loom clip, and it snaps down. And the brake light back together. These ones here are the signal lights, like so. So you can see that this wire is substantially longer than it was, and that's for the signal light. Normally it was way back here, so I've got a little bit extra there. But then we're going to just plug the signal lights in here. So before you put the plastic back on the bike, you want to make sure that you plug your signal lights in and make sure that you have the proper side flashing with the proper side. The voltage or the amperage on LED lights is much lower, so that's why you get the hyper flash, because we've got a old school flasher unit, and depending on the amount of load, that sort of sets the timing for the flasher. So when we put LEDs in and they don't draw the same power, you get the hyper flash, it's called. You can either put resistors in to fix that, or you can change the flasher unit. This is the flasher, and this is an LED flasher, and they're about 15 bucks on Amazon, 10 bucks depending. So if you change the front signal lights at the same time you do LEDs up front, and then we're putting LEDs on the back, you don't need to mess around with resistors. You can just change the flasher unit and life is good. So a really good source for LED signal lights is Cyclops Adventure Sports. They've got some really cool multi-function lights. So your signal lights on the back double as brake lights if you're not signaling at the same time. So you hit the brakes, your brake light comes on, and your flashers come on solid and red, but they still flash amber when you use a signal light. Pretty cool. Very high quality stuff, highly recommended. Or you can go the other way and go super cheap off of Amazon and kind of take your chances with them, and maybe be replacing them a little bit sooner, but they work well enough as well. All right, so we're going to pretend that we have these signal lights wired, and we're going to get the bike buttoned back up and get this project wrapped up. When you go to put this on, just remember this tab. We've got to slide this in from the back forward. And again, this stuff can be a little bit brittle, so make sure you're not forcing any of this stuff on. Make sure that you've got it all in the right spot before you put too much pressure on it. Got our plastic rivets here at the top again. And we're going to put our side covers back on. These guys have some rubber push pins in here too. So this one's got a barb on it, goes into that one there, and then this one doesn't have a barb, but it goes into that rubber piece there to locate this. And again, the black one goes to the front. So this is the slightly larger, this is the 5x8 backing plate. So that's most of the Canadian provinces. There is a 4x7 inch option for the US. We do not have the big ones for other parts of the world. So if you are interested in one of the tail tidies, please send me an email. Let me know where you live and the dimensions of your plate. I've done a bunch of internet searching, and it looks like plate sizes vary drastically all over the world. So just trying to figure out a good way to make a backing plate that's going to work for as many other countries as we can. The kit comes with the Euro-style Torx / hex large flange bolts and the flange nuts. So when you go to put your plate on, there are 4 bolts, 4 nuts included, and a dabble Loctite on these guys is recommended as well. That wraps up the Camel ADV tail tidy for the Yamaha T7. If you have any questions, as always, info@camel-adv.com. Thanks for watching.